Implement the edit functionality. Right now, when we click on the edit button, nothing is happening. So what we will be doing that, let's add the code related to this edit command button. So for that, I'm moving to the React.js application, and let me go to the button where I have implemented it. Okay, so this is the button where I have implemented. So guys, here what should be done, that whenever user will click on this edit button, okay, at that time the control should be transferred to add student. Okay, and this add student should have listing of not listing, but the information of the particular student. So that, what does it mean, that whenever I'll be clicking on this edit, okay, at that time that this information should go to, it should go to this add student, okay, over here. Okay, so let's do that. So first thing is that I'm going to add one element called link. Okay, so whenever user will click on this button, it would be redirected to the this particular component. Which component? Student.js. Okay, so I'm writing like link to is equal to that student slash student dot id. Okay, right, and the ending tag would come over here. Okay, right, so I have added this link. Okay, so to this js file, so I must have to import it. So let me import that. Import link from, it comes from the react router DOM. So react router dash DOM. Okay, let me save this. Now there should not be any error. Okay, it shows me there is an error. Okay, so I must have to write this within the curly brace. Okay, now this error will also gone. Perfect. Okay, now if I will go to this view student, then you can see that whenever you hover the mouse on this, that is edit, okay, at that time you should get the URL with the student ID. Unfortunately, I'm getting the student ID. If you see the taskbar in the footer, right? Okay, so let me correct the code. What wrong, what is the wrong thing that I have done? So let me go to the view student, and here that this should be the student.id should be outside this quotation mark. Okay, so let me write it like this. Okay, this is one of the way that I can solve the error. Yeah, this is showing me that the unexpected thing on the line number 43. This should be in curly braces. Okay, let me save this. Okay, now everything works perfectly. Okay, this error will be removed. Okay, let me go back to the page, and here now I should get the different ID, student ID, and I'm getting the different student ID. Okay, so now here I have written the code in such a way that whenever user will click on the button, the control should be redirected to this. Okay, so this thing I have to write in a router. Okay, so moving back to the router, that is in the app.js, here I'll be writing a route like this. Let me write a route, that is route path is equal to, okay, and let me keep the name that is update student rather than keeping it simple student, okay, so that it will make it more clear to the user. So update student, okay, update student, then the element which is going to be called is which one? The student itself, okay, so I'm going to use this element that is student. This student component should be called, okay, so let me write like this, and let me end this component, okay, and I'm saving it. There should not be any error. Yeah, of course there are no errors, right? Now not only that, I must have to pass the student ID to this component, then and then it is going to work, okay. So how that would be passed? So that would be passed like this, that I have to add the backslash, then sorry, forward slash, then the id, okay. So here the name is that id, okay. Let's have the name that is id, and that id will be passed over here. Now if I will go to the page and then I will click on the edit, then it will redirect me to the add student page, okay. So let me click on that, and here you can see that I'm not able to see that component right now, but here you can see this particular url. So this is the url that I'm getting right now, okay. So now how to open the record inside the add student so that the user can update it. So let me check my code that I have written this student. Okay, so this should be a display that update student is the correct one. Okay, with the ID and student. Okay, let me go to the view student and let me check what I have written. That is update student. Okay, let me copy this and paste it over here. It is exactly same. Okay, let me check. Yeah, it is working now. So maybe I forgot to save it. Okay, so view student, then let me click on edit. So here you can see that the add student is getting called, okay, but the information is not coming over here, right? So what I supposed to do, I need to fetch the record of this particular student, okay. So how can I do that? So for that I'll be moving to the student JS, okay, because that ultimately that particular component is getting called. So here I'll be using one more hook, right, and that hook is use pearl, okay. So this is what I'm going to use. This particular hook will help me to get the student ID from the URL, this one, okay. Yeah, and I'm also going to use this navigation because later on, once the record has been updated, I will redirect to the student listing page. Okay, so these are the two things that I have added. Okay, so I'm having the student ID with me, right? And now I will try to update it. Okay, so whenever the user will click on the submit, it should be updated. Okay, so let me go to the code of submit. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so guys, here you can see this is the submit command button, right? And see what is going to happen, that whenever user will click on the submit, at that time this save add student is going to be called. Okay, so this is the code that we already have. Okay, I don't require to do anything else over here now. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. Okay, but this code, this add student code will add a new student, whereas in this case what we want to do, that whenever this information would come, that is going to update the existing record. Okay, so I should not use this post. What else I have to use? I must have to use the put. Okay, then and then it is going to update the existing record, otherwise it will not update, but it will keep on adding new records to the system. Okay, and we don't want that. Okay, so what else we can do, that whenever that user will click on this, that update, okay, that whenever there is a student id available when this particular component would be loaded, okay, at that time this should not be called. Okay, right, rather than that what should happen, that it should call the put. Okay, so how can I write a code for that? So for that I'm just doing change over here in the add student, or else you can write some other method like update student kind of. Okay, but here what I'm going to do, I'm writing that inside this only. Okay, so here what I'll be doing, that I will check that if there is a student id, okay, student id is equal to null. Okay, the student id is not available. Okay, in that case this should be done, because that would be the new record. Okay, else if there is a student id, then what should happen, that it should call the put method, right? So here I'm writing xus dot put. Okay, and what else I require to have over there, I have to pass the url, that is http colon double slash local host colon 8080, right? And then this would be student. We are yet to implement this in the backend. Okay, so don't worry about that. Student slash followed by, I must have to specify the student id, that is student id. Okay, comma, along with that I have to specify, I have to pass the record, that is the student record. Okay, so student. Okay, then I will catch the response. Okay, that is response alert record, sorry, response dot data, response dot data. And also would like to catch the error, so error, then alert, this would be error. Okay, so my code to update the record is ready for in the front end. Okay, now I'll be adding a code to the back end. Okay, so now let's go to the back end. Here in the back end I'm going to write a mapping related to put, okay, or update. So I'm writing a new annotation, that is a put mapping annotation. I'll be getting a url like this, that is the student slash id. Okay, the id which we have mentioned over there. Let me show you this one, the student id. Okay, and this should go into the curly brace, sorry, not curly brace but the quotation marks. Okay, and I will be writing a code, that is public string update student. The method name could be anything, and I'm going to have that request body. Okay, that request body would be of student student, comma, I will be getting that path variable, so that I will get fetch the record from the backend. So path variable, that is integer id. Okay. Now inside this method, first thing is that I need to fetch the record from the backend. Okay. So I'm going to get the student from the backend, that is student. Okay. Here I'm writing existing student, existing student is equal to, using the student repository dot get by id. Okay, get by id. This shows that this is the deprecated. Okay, it's okay that I can use it for a moment, or let me check the another one. Okay, don't have a habit to use the deprecated method. So the method would be find by id. Okay, not find, this find by id. Okay, so find by id. Okay, and I would be having the student list. Here this find by id return the optional thing, so I have to write get one or get. Okay, so now this would return the student. Okay, and it will get the student. Okay, now I just have to update the values of existing student with the new one, which is passed over here. So I'm writing like existing student dot set name. Okay, as we are not sure that what has been updated, so we are going to update everything. Okay, so existing student set name, that is equal to student dot get name. Okay, similarly I would update the address field, that is existing student dot set address. Okay, so student dot set address. Okay, student dot set address. Okay, and once, sorry, it should not be set address, but it would be get address. Okay, right. So once this is done, then I will return the string, that is record is updated. Okay, record is updated, so our backend is ready. Okay, let me rerun the application. Okay, and moving back to the front end. So this is the front end that we have already created. The application is restarted successfully, the backend application. Okay, so I'm closing that and moving back to the page. Okay, let's go to the page, and it says that use navigate is not defined. Okay, so let me define that first. So where the use navigate is, okay, this is, okay, I'm just importing it from the React. All these are React hooks. Okay, so that is what we have done. Okay, and now let me see that whether it is working or not. So guys, it is not working. Okay, so what I'll be doing, that let's go to the console and let's check for the errors. What is the error? It says that not a function on the line number 12 is not a function in the student.js. Let's see what we have written. This one, that constant use params is not a function, says that. Okay, so here I have made a mistake, that this use param and use navigate are not a part of React, but they are a part of React router DOM. Okay, so let me remove from there, and I'm going to import from here, that is use params, okay, from React router DOM, okay, and also that I have to specify use navigate, which I have used over here, okay, right. So is this says that use params not defined. I have mentioned user param, that's why use param, okay. Now this works, okay. Let me go back to the application and let's see. Now the record is coming, and let me delete this and let me refresh this should work, okay. So here you can see that uh, the application is working successfully, but still that record is not coming over here. So we have done we forgot to write a code to fetch the record from the backend. So moving back to this uh, student.js, and here as I want to load the record when the component would be mount, but when there would be a student ID, means that whenever there would be a request of update, then only. Okay, so how can I do that? I can use the use effect. If you can recall that earlier we had used that. Okay, so I'm using that use effect. Okay, and then here I would be having arrow function, and inside the arrow function that I'll be writing a code, okay, like the code would be if student id not equal to null, then and then this should be executed, okay. So what should be done? You should call the axios dot get request, okay, right. We are going to implement our last endpoint in the backend, that is a get, okay. So the URL would be http colon double slash localhost slash sorry colon the port number, that is 8080 slash student slash followed by student ID, that is student ID, okay, right. And once the record is there, then what should happen? That it should be mount or map to the state variable, these three state variables which we have created, that ID, name and address, okay. So then response, okay, response inside this I'll be writing like this, that set ID, the record would be response dot data dot id, okay. Another one would be set name is equal to response dot data dot name, and the last one would be set address response dot data dot address, okay, right. So we have implemented the code so that whenever this component would be loaded to update the record, at that time only it will be filled with the student information, okay. Now let's go to the backend and let's write a code. So here in the backend I'm going to write a endpoint to get the information of particular student. So I'm going to use the get mapping, and there I'll be writing the URL, that is student followed by id path variable, okay. So here the method would be public. Now it should return the student object, okay. So public return type student get student, okay, with the path variable id, and inside this should be integer. Inside this the code would be return student repository dot find by id, find by id, and the id would be from id dot get. Okay, that's it. This is what I have to write in the backend. Okay, let me rerun the backend. So the backend is started. Let me go back to the application. Okay, and if I will reload this, I should get the student information. I'm not getting the student information. Let me go back to the view student and let me click on edit. Okay, so let's see that what is the error. So moving back to the inspect and getting to the console, and here it shows that each child in the list should have a unique key props. Okay, so I have made a mistake over here. So let me go to the view student, and there here I have done mistake. Okay, so here what I supposed to do, I have to specify key, then and then this would work. Okay, so let me specify the key is equal to student dot id. Okay, let me save this. Now we should work. Okay, and let me refresh the page. Okay, request failed with status code 400. So I'm getting undefined over here. I'm not getting the path value from the path environment variable. Okay, let me see that what is the mistake. The mistake here that I'm specifying use effect axios dot get. This is the view student. I require to move over here. Yeah, student with student id, student id. Okay, and what I have written in the app.js, I have written id. Okay guys, so please make sure these two things should be same, that is the id and this one, the student id. Okay, so here let me copy this and replace this id with the student id, then and then this would work, otherwise not. Okay, so let me go back, and here you can see the record is there. Okay, so let me show you that now there is no error in the console. Okay, this is a different thing. Okay, let's ignore that, and here you can see the record is successfully fetched. Okay, so now let me change the address. I'm changing the address this to Nagar. Okay, I'm not allowed to change this. Okay, so let me see that what is the reason. Let me see that I'm there in the student JS. Okay, one thing I forgot to do over here, and the reason of that error is that it is not allowing me to update. Okay, okay, let me refresh this and let me check it once again. Okay, yeah, so the reason was I forgot to add this square bracket inside this use effect. Okay, previously the code was like this. Okay, and if that I am not going to specify the square bracket in the use effect, then it will not allow me to change the value in the text box. Okay, so just I'm putting the square bracket. Okay, what is the meaning of this? That putting the square bracket, it means that it is not going to keep on fetching from the backend. Once the record is available, it will stop fetching. Okay, so that was the reason. Okay, so I have updated the code, and now let me change this to Vidyanagar. Okay, let me click on submit. It should update the record. So let me check that whether the record has been updated or not. So moving back to the workbench and select the record. Okay, so here you can see that it is not getting updated. Let me refresh it once again. Okay, let me see that what has happened to the backend. Oh, yeah, the mistake is that here I have forgotten. What I have forgotten? I forgot to save the record back to the database. Okay, so I have to add a line that is uh, the student repository dot save. Okay, and here I'll be providing the value that is existing student. Okay, then and then it would be updated to the backend, otherwise not. Okay, so let me rerun the application. Okay, application is started, and let me go back to the front end, go to the view student. Okay, let me edit this record, and here instead of Shah I'm writing Vidyanagar. Okay, let me click on submit. The record should be updated successfully. Let me check that. Yes, it is updated successfully. Okay,